Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Anaiso Frank, the founder of QualitaX, and I'm joined today by one guest. Before we get started with introductions, and as a reminder, on today's call, we will explore the growing adoption of public Ethereum as an enterprise-grade business platform, and how businesses are leveraging Ethereum public infrastructure. So about the format, we'll have a conversation for 45 minutes, and we will leave 15-20 minutes to address attendees' questions at the end. So please do not hesitate to share your questions in the chat as we go. So I think we can share camera on now. Yeah. So yes, let's start with introduction. So Karen, can you tell us about your role at the Ethereum Enterprise Ethereum Alliance (EEA) for short, for those who do not know, what the EEA does, and a bit about your background in the blockchain space in general?
Absolutely. Let me silence some things on my side real quick over here. Okay, good to go. So apologies for being a few minutes late to this as well. I'm really excited to be here with this group and talk about things and to see you again, Anais. I am the executive director of the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and our group works with different companies in the ecosystem to promote the learnings and adoption around the Ethereum ecosystem and the enterprise environment. The group started in 2017 and has continued to evolve with different standards groups and activities in the ecosystem. So personally, I've been in blockchain since 2017. I did some work with Consensus very early on at that time, and I'm in Houston, so oil and gas is very close to us here, and I spent some time with BP in their innovation group leading their blockchain strategy. So I got a lot of experience seeing enterprise adoption from a client side and how a company whose main business that maybe wasn't technology might actually use blockchain, because that company had everything from trading use cases to retail to supply chain. So there was a lot of different lenses to look at the ecosystem in. And being motivated to make that type of adoption easier for enterprise, I joined Microsoft last year and am working in their blockchain team. We have a supply chain financing use case that we have live for our hardware supply chain right now that's seen a lot of inflows due to the recent demand and capacities that we have. And spent the year at Microsoft on the board of EEA, and now I'm looking forward to continuing in this role.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So before we start the discussion, maybe we should provide a quick overview of the report for those who have not read it yet. So I will share the link in the chat. And do you want me to give a brief overview, or would you like to do it?
Oh, sure. This is a really exciting piece of work for the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. We started the business readiness report in 2002. I actually participated as an interviewee from BP.
Yes, I remember.
Yes, time flies. And what the report is intended to do is give enterprise a complete holistic overview of what is happening in the Ethereum ecosystem, what other enterprises are doing, what use cases they're looking at, and the readiness of the technology, and also the challenges that are out there. So some things that were noted this year were a lot of use cases around tokenization, and not only in our report, but you could also see JP Morgan and BlackRock making commentary around the use cases and tokenization as well. There was mention of the after effects of the crypto winter having slowed down perhaps some adoption, but what the report actually found is the developers who were in the ecosystem more than 12 months continued to stay and build. And more recently, there's actually some reporting that the downloads of these software development kits in Ethereum have actually increased. So there's even evolving ecosystems after this report is finished, I think, that you can still see picking up this year. So It tries to give the enterprise ecosystem a snapshot in time of all the current use cases and what we're looking to for the future as well.
Okay, great. So in terms of the industries and use cases that have been highlighted in the report, which one have we seen as the greatest, I would say, adoption over the past year? So across infrastructure, capital markets, payment, logistic, and supply chain, etc.
Oh, that's a great question because I think enterprise is constantly testing different use cases because a lot of different companies have use cases applicable to trading and financing that may not hit a retail customer, but there's also been a lot of loyalty programs that have looked at NFTs and other ways that they can connect with customers. So I think the interesting use cases around tokenization with major financial partners like JP Morgan, testing what they can do on Polygon, like Franklin Templeton and their money market fund on Polygon as well, are really standouts and still evolving as to how they can reach customers at the end of the day. And then others are a little bit more tangible in customer hands. So there was a NFT drops from DC Comics. Nike's been very involved in team markets, and that industry continues to look at ways that they can engage customers in new ways and loyalty that maybe are a little bit different than what they've done before. We're all familiar with loyalty point systems and how we can connect with a brand, but it looks like lots of brands are looking to do this in new ways. Just yesterday, a standout use case came out again where GoDaddy has partnered with the
Yes.
Ethereum Page service.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
To provide validation of sites through that. So you can even still see in what's coming out day to day just how much we're looking for ways to start to use the Ethereum ecosystem more as a standard and accessible layer of not only value, but also verification.
Yes, as you said, capital markets. So I go back a few sentences. It's definitely one of the top industries that have adopted public infrastructure, not only on the mainnet, but also on layer twos. You mentioned polygons, but there are others in the ecosystem. And what I've seen as well is on the infrastructure side. So a few years ago, there was still the maturity level on the tech side was still challenging. There were a lot of even technical barriers before speaking about regulatory guidance and lack of clarity that prohibited different industries in even trying and adopting Ethereum technologies. But it seems that infrastructure players have really invested significantly over the last year to allow those other more traditional industry to actually have the tools required to build and participate in the ecosystem. So that's definitely great as well. Do you want to share with us maybe an example of successful case studies that you have seen, maybe on the supply chain side, because this is where you had experience previously with BP or even with Microsoft?
Yeah, I think the North Star for a lot of supply chain use cases is going to be eventually the ability to do real-time financial settlement with stable tokens.
Yes.
So I think we're seeing the steps towards that trajectory continue to evolve. The real-world asset tokenization continues to accelerate. You can see even companies like MakerDAO within the past year or two, including real world assets into their collateral. So if you're not familiar with MakerDAO and DAI is a crypto asset backed stable token that exists on the Ethereum network, and it is collateralized with various cryptocurrencies and also now real world assets that are tokenized. It does have one of the largest market caps. I haven't checked it in a while. Somebody can do a quick search and verify for me, but it was started in 2018, so it has a legacy of moving through the ecosystem during different cycles as well. Um, but that's a standout use case of where we've seen real world assets, certainly, and seen more companies striving to get those online as well. Several different real estate tokenization companies have formed. And ultimately, the ability of these assets to move around in such a way that they're more closely connected to a value and settlement layer is what Ethereum and blockchain offers at the end of the day. So I think each of these steps is connecting on a journey that's going to rapidly accelerate us in a few years.
Yes, definitely. So why now? Because blockchain technology has been around, they have been up and down and correlated with crypto winters as well. But what are the factors that have positively impacted adoption and that have really allowed those use cases from regulated stablecoin, world assets, so real estate tokenization to pick up, would you say?
Yeah. This is the part I like to talk about because this question applies to a lot of what's happening in the background on the technology side
Yes,
for
yes.
Ethereum. So one of the things that the Ethereum Foundation says is that their product is secure Ethereum block space. So as an organization, the Ethereum Foundation with Vitalik and all the other researchers, the team who helped Ethereum move from proof of work to proof of stake, their product for the ecosystem is secure block space in order for the Ethereum community to validate transactions. So one thing about that block space, I believe it's on average like 100 kilobytes right now. It fluctuates between I think like 80 and 120. But that we know from in a digital world, that's not a whole lot of space. So what the community did to accelerate the ability to use that space was build layer 2 ecosystems on top of the Ethereum blockchain so that you could more efficiently use the block space of the Ethereum ecosystem. So if you look at what's happened over the past 2 years, these L2 ecosystems, their core objective, if you're not interested in learning about cryptographic proofs and zero knowledge, was to use Ethereum block space more efficiently, which is what they're doing and why they've been able to attract so much activity there. So, for example, a standout is Coinbase launched their L2 network base. And that's an exciting way for Coinbase not only to enable applications to be built within their ecosystem on a decentralized network, but also to leverage the Coinbase ecosystem, which may include things like verifications or oversight that may not be provided in other L2s. So there's a lot of different journeys in that space right now. Some L2s are more ready than others, but the consistency of more transactions moving from mainnet to L2s and increasing the throughput of overall Ethereum by 100x in the future
Yes.
is where the infrastructure teams needed to step up and give the ability of the network to support all these new use cases.
Yes, so basically addressing the scalability issue has been a key driver in allowing different business use cases to flourish in the ecosystem over the last year. And also when you mentioned zero knowledge technologies, so is it a case that tackling the privacy and security concerns through zero knowledge technologies also give a level of confidence that was not there previously? Because as we know, there were a lot of security issues, bridge hack, and all of those things that created a perception that the technical maturity was just the technical readiness was not there. The technology was not mature enough to operate safely. So would you say that was also another factor?
Yeah, so there has inherently been the ability of a network like Ethereum to display massive failures, just how much value is on the network. So, unlike other technologies where, I used to sit in an innovation group and there was AI and quantum and robotics. And when robotics or quantum makes a mistake, it doesn't translate into the loss of massive amounts of cryptocurrency. So I think the nature of our network works a little differently when mistakes are heightened and displayed, but you can also argue that's a great thing to accelerate fixing them, which is in fact what has happened. So the major cases that I think people are concerned about are the Ethereum wallet. So the fact that you get your public key, which is equivalent to your password, and your private key, which is equivalent to your public key, which is equivalent to your username, your private key equivalent to your password. And if you lose that private key, you cannot recover your wallet. There are a number of different ways the community has rallied around allowing for recovery. One of those that has come out within the last year is the account abstraction research that is starting to appear on layer 2s. And why that's relevant for recovery is that account abstraction wallets can be programmed such that they can achieve the recovery that is analogous to L2. So to Web 2. So equivalent to how you might recover your Google email address password, you might be able to recover an Ethereum address as well in the future. So without going into too much of the tech about that, effectively account abstraction is bringing that Web 2 feel to the Ethereum ecosystem as well, to provide us not only security, but also the accessibility.
User experience, yes. And for those interested, I don't know if you're aware, but there is bundle beer to track smart account ERC 4337. It's quite interesting if you're a data geek, so I'm sharing for those to see the progression within the ecosystem, but not only within the Ethereum ecosystem, but EVM compatible chains as well. So when we talk about the Ethereum ecosystem, I think EVM is really the key innovation. So it's great to see those innovations, going around beyond the Ethereum ecosystem. So minus yes. So in terms of, and you touch a bit of points that when you talk about payment and stablecoin, are you seeing, or do you think there are any significant geographical differences in adoption of the innovation coming out of the Ethereum ecosystem, not only from a business point of view, where the builders are located, but also from a retail point of view, where users are, and why could that be?
Right. It's a good question because from legacy internet days, if you look at the amount of websites, for example, hosted out of the US, it's 27% of all that's available in the world. And I don't think the same will be said for the Ethereum ecosystem in the future, because we are seeing several jurisdictions that have much more favorable ability to work in than some of the Western states right now. And also, we've also had nations look back on the evolution of technology, maybe perhaps adopting the internet or other forms of technology a little later than they would have liked to, and wanting to ensure that they can lead in this change as opposed to follow. So there are some jurisdictions that have been standouts of interest. I think looking to the government of the UAE, perhaps Singapore as well, the European Union working with the MiCA rules. I think nothing is exactly perfect at this moment, but there's certainly some areas that are working a little bit better than others. And with the ability to facilitate cross-border transactions, it's a natural fit for the regulatory bodies to be able to provide ways to incentivize that to happen in their jurisdictions as opposed to others. We'll see who progresses the furthest first. But oh yes, the UK
Yeah, that's right.
regulation, yeah, as well. But I think what's exciting about this time around is that no one nation or jurisdiction or regulation is going to decide the success or failure of the ecosystem. It's world, by definition worldwide at this point, so we get to leverage the best that's out there.
Yes, definitely. There are a lot of sandboxes in the EU, in the UK, in other jurisdictions such as UAE that you mentioned. And it will be interesting as well to see how this feed into public infrastructure. So some regions or countries are interested in understanding what can be done on permissionless network uh, in, you know, the transition as well from oh, we
Right.
have to use these company. I'm referring to US-based corporation, for example, Google, Microsoft. And it's a bit of a touchy topic, but understanding what blockchain and Ethereum in particular can, how it can help bring this kind of control for their citizen. And so there are interesting experiments happening. It will be interesting to see how they compete with CBDC initiatives, for example, and see where it leads us. But definitely a lot of impactful, I would say, innovation that could not only affect businesses, but the public sector as well. So one of the major friction or barrier to adoption to Ethereum a few years ago was about sustainability and ECG concerns. So now that this has been solved from the move from proof of work to proof of stake, how is the ecosystem monitoring actually and ensuring long-term environmental stability to ensure that those concerns keep, are consistently being addressed for businesses?
Yeah. Well, and for those that may not have seen the numbers yet around the move from proof of work to proof of stake, is effectively moving from proof of work to proof of stake took the energy consumption of Ethereum down over 99%. So it's less than 1% of what it used to be 2 years ago, which is absolutely massive for the ecosystem. If you look at the energy consumption of major applications like YouTube or Netflix, they're orders of magnitude higher than Ethereum right now. So that's not to say there's not room left to optimize for Ethereum, because I think certainly we still have to be diligent about adhering to best practices. The ability of the Ethereum ecosystem to support sustainability best practices is also something to look at as well. So now that we've, in a sense, achieved a major milestone of sustainability, looking at how Ethereum is able to accelerate the distribution of funding to different projects is one way that we can think about it. So one use case that stands out is Shell partnered with a company called Gitcoin last
Yep.
year. And Gitcoin, for those who may not be familiar, effectively distributes grants to projects in the Ethereum ecosystem through a method called quadratic funding. So what quadratic funding is a way to democratically allocate funds among different projects based on the preferences of a group. So in a traditional charitable ecosystem, you may be used to, like, if I give $1, maybe a large donor gives another dollar. If I give $2, I'm matched at $2. But one of the fallacies of that is if there's much larger donors than me and they come in and give $10,000, perhaps there's not a way for me to have as large of a voice as that. What quadratic funding does is basically make it such that my voice has a more comparable equivalency to large donors. So it basically, and using a mathematical equation, levels the playing field for preferences and distributions of a fund system like that. So the main point of Shell doing that was to let the ecosystem decide on the sustainability projects that they might want to fund through Gitcoin. So Shell donated $500,000 to Gitcoin, and then Gitcoin facilitated that quadratic funding round to let participants in the Ethereum ecosystem decide what should we do with that money from Shell. So it went to a number of different projects for which Shell is continuing to monitor and explore possibilities with in the future. But that was a really novel way of a enterprise using the Ethereum ecosystem to co-collaborate and explore possibilities with retail that we haven't seen before. But you see a lot of lack of trust and enterprise today come in.
Yep, I was about to mention. I was thinking, should I mention
Yeah.
it? Should I open the door or not? But you did, so.
Well, there's more than one way to approach that kind of resolution, and I think that exploration of quadratic funding is one way that corporations may give more validity to things that they choose to fund if they let people decide for them among a number of projects what would be best to do.
Yes, of course. And one of the major concerns of the ecosystem, which is linked to the ethos and the values really, is capture, right? And realistically, when we talk about mass adoptions from a business or retail point of view, most businesses are SMEs. They are not large enterprise stakeholders. Therefore, for Ethereum technologies and related technologies to reach the level of Shopify kind of app or PayPal or eBay, the level of abstraction that is required is quite high. And currently, I do personally think that the space is still maybe too technocentric, or we have not reached the right level of abstraction to allow businesses which are not enterprise level, who may not have innovation and emerging tech department, to safely allocate budget to experiment, not only experiment at small scale, but potentially to impact their business as a whole. So, but I'm very hopeful because we see a new application in the domain of social with Forecaster, Warpcast, etc. We see a lot of payments, and payments, I believe, based on the report, is a third in terms of number of companies building in the ecosystem, so facilitating payment between cross borders, etc., or small, I would say, businesses in emerging markets using stablecoins. So, what is your view on what could be done to allow the SMEs, rather than very large enterprise, to also contribute and learn, be on the journey rather than wait until the very end, potentially.
Right. Well, there's a lot more, I think, that small companies realize they can do more quickly sometimes than large enterprises. Like speed of execution is much easier to achieve in an environment with a small team. And what's interesting about the accessibility of those teams to the tools of today is that, for example, if you take the resources that OpenAI was able to leverage from Microsoft Cloud, you can, partner with enterprise in a productive way to accelerate what a small team can do. But on the ability, you mentioned kind of abstracting away layers from Ethereum or cryptocurrencies and blockchain now to the point where it looks like Web 2 and you're not really doing much on
Infra stuff, yes.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
Well, and it's one thing I think of too is just another example. eBay, for example, had to first trust that checks were going to go by mail when they started their auctioning site. So there were not payments available on the internet at that time in a secure way. But somehow they tested, would people trust sending checks in the mail for goods that they would send the other way? And it worked. And there's probably a lot more testing that smaller companies could do to validate what users would be able to accept than larger companies might be able to do at a more rapid rate right now. So I would encourage a lot more testing of what may or may not work. A good example of that over the past years, there was a social application called FriendTech that exists on Base's layer 2 network, and the concept was personal tokenization for different chat rooms essentially. But the more interesting part of that application is it's one of the first in the ecosystem that you effectively got an app downloaded on your phone like you would out of the Apple Play Store, and you never had to work with opening up a wallet with private keys in such a way that you had to, store around the, seed phrase, etc. In that category. So in terms of user experience, they tested would users like this over downloading their own private keys, and a lot of users did. And that's something that I think is one good example of how you can start to see how small companies might test more of what could be acceptable on the user front.
Yes, definitely. And the report mentions that more and more businesses are recognizing Ethereum mainnet as a base and settlement layer. So it's easy to understand what it means from an infrastructure point of view when we think about layer twos and the layers above. But what does it mean outside of infrastructure? What does it mean for financial institutions? What does it mean for a Shell or for a BP that this layer is considered as a settlement layer? Could you maybe explain to us what that means?
Okay. Yeah, I think there's two tiers of what it means. It's what it means within the Ethereum ecosystem and outside the Ethereum ecosystem. So within the Ethereum ecosystem, it means that the L1 Ethereum environment is going to be our layer in which we decide what transactions are ultimately valid and included. And that under the assumption that you build a layer 2 or even a layer 3 in such a way that it is provable and checkable on L1, you will be able to settle with the quote unquote Supreme Court of L1. The external definitions of Ethereum being a settlement layer, I think it puts the legitimacy of Ethereum hopefully in the future on par with other ecosystems. I think it's valid to think that we're going to see a lot of other financial industries persist as they are, and we're potentially just going to exist in a different risk category. But the decades and decades of work that, for example, even went towards building the Swift system that we have today. I believe that was 2 to 4 decades of work before we even had that as a centralized system. So we can expect gradual changes here as well, but sometimes changes tend to happen very slowly and then all at once. There could be bolts of that with what we do as well, but there's a lot of challenges to be solved. But what gives me confidence in the Ethereum ecosystem is I can't think of a particular technical or organization type challenge that I don't see people working on, and there isn't a research group or some company trying to solve it. So that to me gives legitimacy and scalability of the future a bright spot for Ethereum.
Yes, definitely. I think everybody on the call, we are all believers in what Ethereum can deliver on the business side, obviously, but more impactfully for society and what it can enable citizens and users to achieve that they cannot do or have concern doing currently in the centralized world. So I'm just cautious of time. So I want to ask, as we are going into 2024, what are the biggest opportunities and challenges do you see for the space and for businesses? So for the ecosystem, the builders, the participant, and for people willing to adopt or to at least test Ethereum technologies?
We have had so much activity in L2 come about that I think now the standardization, or not necessarily standardization, but the organization around coordinating all of those is something that enterprise is going to have to navigate. So, what L2 is right for your enterprise, and what exactly is your use case, and what do you think your future use of Ethereum is going to be? That is one challenge to navigate for enterprise, because there are a lot of options out there. I think compared to 2017-18 for enterprise, blockchain conceptually was more or less something that you could purchase off the shelf from a variety of different consulting vendors or large companies or other enterprises. And now L2s are things that have remained in the startup ecosystem with good reason for the tokenomics behind them and what they're trying to achieve with mainnet. But that's a different field for enterprise to navigate than working with other vendors that they may have been more familiar with. But more tangibly for developers in the ecosystem, they're going to see a little bit of a challenge on the similar side of that. So, for example, managing different wallets across all the L2 ecosystem is one challenge that developers will have to address. And also ensuring all these layer 2 ecosystems achieve a privacy layer. So that is something that is within reach without a doubt. It again is not a technology that is as off the shelf as some others, but the zero knowledge community that works on the privacy side, and even those working in homomorphic encryption and other privacy enhancing technologies, you can use those in concert with L2, but you do need to work with the right expertise in order to be able to do so now.
Yes. So do you think that those projects will still remain in the, I would say, proof of concept stage, or that are there still key requirements that cannot be met, which will explain why some enterprises are still focused on exploring private permissions rather than going through the permissionless space?
Well, from where I've seen enterprise, I think they're at the inflection point of deciding private versus public L2s, and each of them carry a different set of risks. If you look towards L2s, you're going to have to work with a couple of different tooling sets, perhaps to build your application and maybe newer. But to the point of private blockchains, that may well be accessible, but you may put yourself in a position that's exclusive of where the future technology evolution is going. So neither are absolutely perfect to build in from an enterprise side, because they carry their own uncertainties. But I'm encouraged by the fact that if you look on the past 5 years of Ethereum, I think what the public ecosystem has consistently proved is their ability to rapidly iterate and improve Ethereum as a base layer, but also all of the other applications around it. So to me, it makes a lot of sense to stick with the public community that's had that success in the past and has demonstrated that.
Yes, as an example, you were mentioning earlier the tokenization use cases, because now we have standards for permission tokens. So in addition to the privacy layer, we'll have a permission layer, which is more regulatory compliant, so that those enterprises and businesses can leverage the benefits of public permissionless, but still with the layers that they can show regulatory compliance. And big protocols that have been very successful without that layer, for example, Uniswap, now have that layers to cater for the business needs and requirements. So that's great. I have one last question. Are there anything that you are personally excited when it comes to the Ethereum roadmap in general, or anything that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I think one thing that's exciting, I don't know if people have looked out this far into the roadmap, but there is a path towards Ethereum's ability to exist in a post-quantum computing world.
Yeah. Mm.
So that to me is something we used to discuss as a discredit to blockchain ecosystems, but Ethereum has thought about the world in which quantum computers exist and how we would manage around that. And so, like a good example is the digital signatures that you use for your wallet with your private and public key. There's a path to those signatures using a post-quantum resistant signature scheme. And yeah, that's extremely significant because the blockchain and crypto is not the only technology on the minds of enterprise executives. So we have to keep it in context. But that's one thing I really like pointing to because we're not just trying to get to next year. We're trying to get to the next couple of decades here.
Exactly, exactly. Yes, the convergence of different emerging technologies. You mentioned quantum, but also what can be done with AI and supporting open, not OpenAI as a company, but open artificial intelligence model infrastructure. I think the blockchain use cases when it comes to AI application for businesses is something to be excited about. Well, I'm excited about this as well. So I will now open the floor, I guess, to questions from attendees. Is there anything you would like to ask Karen about the work of the EA or about the report itself or the Ethereum ecosystem in general? Please do not hesitate. I will check the QA now. Sometimes people put it in the QA section rather than. Okay, I see some. Okay. No, I'll give 30 seconds and then we can uh, wrap up if there are no questions. It means we covered everything.
I do see one question from
Oh,
Jamie.
sorry. Oh, I missed that. Where is the question? Oh,
I
sorry. I've just seen in the Q&A. My apologies, Jimmy. My bad. I will read it. I work in non-financial applications of blockchain supply chain, so UX is definitely the biggest barrier to adoption. Any good example implementations of ERC 467 standards? We are trying to create multi-stakeholders ecosystems via blockchain, so having a completely permissionless chain is hard to sell on top. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that world completely permissionless. It's hard. But as far as ERC 4337, making sure I recall that correctly is the account abstraction
Yes.
for get all the numbers jumbled here. If you Visa has looked at that
Yep.
standard for reoccurring payments. You, but that you asked about non-financial use case. So let me pull another one here. If you look at some gaming applications, actually, the ability to use single session keys is something that standard supports as well. I can't think of the exact gaming application off the top of my head, but I believe it's the Starknet
Okay.
community that has done that for one of their gaming applications. So the ability to log into a blockchain-based game once and not have to sign every transaction, but for a particular session, just like how you would be logged into your Google email, be able to participate and then exit and then rejoin for another session. So that's a good example of non-financial there. Hopefully that suffices. Could have some applications for financial, but that single session key use is an interesting one.
Yes, definitely.
Mhm.
So we have another. Oh, you're very much welcome, Jimmy. Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, great. Well, before we go, is there anything, Karen, on your side that you would like to share? All good?
Yeah, as here representing the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, if any of you would like to join, you're more than welcome to reach out to myself. Let me post our website in here as well. We're looking for more participants in the ecosystem to join us on the journey of creating the standards and operating with the startups in the ecosystem that are looking for the right use cases and partners as well. Um, But thank you for joining on to here today, and I definitely encourage you to go back and look at the report in full. Can read it over several cups of coffee. It's very dense with a lot of information, but it is a great way if you're working in enterprise to be able to go back to your stakeholders and point to specific projects that other enterprises have done that may allow you to unlock some barriers in doing work in your own companies.
Yes, I will add to this that the report is very comprehensive. It covers different industries, so definitely relevant for non-financial use cases. It's around 100 pages. It could definitely help putting together like high-level business cases and at least identify what companies in your space are doing, and then take it from there to see, okay, what can be done and what I can put, what the team can put together to potentially build a, well, oh, sorry. The report was, I can add now. I probably shared it before you joined, so I will send it again. Oh, thank you, Karen.
Yep.
So you can download the full report as well as the highlight from the EEA website. You're very much welcome, Andrew. Well, thank you very much, Karen, to take the time to share your knowledge, experience, and insight from the report with us. And you shared, I believe, yep, the EA membership application for those interested to join. And for the attendees, thank you for joining us and thank you for listening today. And
Thanks,
bye
everyone.
for now.